Welcome everyone to the Borough of Swissvale's agenda meeting for July 26th, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Let's go through our roll call. Miss Alfonso Wells, I don't believe was able to be with us tonight.
She indicated she will not be with us. She had sent me an email earlier.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Mr. Miser.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Mr. Quinn.
Here.
Ms. Scales. Ms. Scales, can you hear us? We'll loop back to her in just a moment. Ms. Stribling.
Present.
Mayor Schwartzwelder.
Here.
All right. Well, Leanne, can you hear us? I mean, I see her online and she's muted right now. Don't know if she stepped away from her computer for a moment. Ms. Scales, can you hear us? Well, I know she's here and I'm sure she'll join us in a moment. Mr. McTiernan, am I allowed to keep moving? What do I do in a situation like this?
Yeah, you can proceed. I think she's eventually going to come on and be counted, but that you proceed with the meeting.
Okay.
You have a quorum.
We do. All right, so let's move to our public comment. We have 3 public comments that were submitted. The first is, and Francine, I'm sorry, I don't actually know how to pronounce your last name. Francine Mate for the food pantry? Mady.
Yes.
I was close. Well, Francine, the floor is yours. Go ahead and share your public comment.
I just wanted to comment on the fact that we're in danger of losing our food pantry location. And we're hoping that we could work together with the council to figure out a way that maybe everybody could band together and save this location, whether it's the borough buys the building and we pay rent to them in order to cover the mortgage, or whatever assistance we can get, because it's used for many other things and our numbers of people in need in Swissvale just keep growing.
Francine, was there more you wanted to comment about that? Do you have any numbers or figures for us?
Well, as of the last count, we have served about 250 people a month. And then we also do Swissvale Towers. And for extra things that are left over, we go to Power and Angela's Place. And we also give to the Free Store in Braddock. And we've also done eyeglasses, many other things. And I know Nelson is going to comment on a lot of these things. So I don't want to overstep. So I'm just going to let him take care of the numbers and things.
Well, he's still connecting to audio right now. I don't know if he needs to leave and rejoin. Yeah, his audio is not connected. So he's not hearing anything that we're saying right now. Do you know, because I know full disclosure for council, I serve at the food pantry once a month. Our church hands out diapers to clients there, and I've had conversations with Francine and Nelson and some of the other leadership about some of this very cursory at the beginning of the month. I don't know if this is what prompted Francine, but I had pledged some potential funding from my share of the ARPA fund to the food pantry. Francine, do you have do you know is the building actively being sold right now? I know when we had talked earlier in the month, it was up for sale, but there were a lot of details that needed to be ironed out. Have you?
It is up for sale. The price right now, I believe, is $179,000, but I don't believe that they'll get that amount of money. Now, Nelson had told me that somebody came to look at it Thursday after our distribution at 1 o'clock. So things are moving, but not moving.
Okay.
I figured just roughly that if we could get the building for $120,000 or $130,000 with the $30,000 down payment, what we pay in rent now, we could pay to cover the mortgage. It would be about the same amount, which is like $175.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I know Nelson is still having some technical difficulty. I think he's being assisted. So does any council members have any questions for Francine before maybe we'll leapfrog Nelson to the other public comment and then we'll circle back to him if he's able to. he's able to join. Are there any questions?
Hi, Francine. This is Will Deanne.
Yes.
Hey. I'm very much aware in terms of what's going on with that building. Are there any other buildings in Swissvale that you guys are looking at or consider that are actually available?
Nelson would know more about that because I know he's been looking. But the thing about the food pantry that we have now is we've invested so much time and resources into this certain area, and we have perfect shelving, loading dock. We have no backup. You just walk through one side.
Okay.
So, and we have so much room to be able to store things for, the customers that come through. We have freezers, refrigerators that we've installed in there. So it's just, like I said, it's the perfect location. We just hate to lose that and have to start all over again.
So hopefully Nelson will have an opportunity to join us. I want to make sure, Mr. Batchy or Mr. McTiernan, when you get to your reports, if one of the two of you would be willing to comment on kind of your initial reaction to this, hopefully we can get some more details from Nelson. But in the event that he's not able to connect, could you please give us some, what is the precedent for these types of requests in terms of asking Swissvale to assist in this manner, and what are the potential legal implications of said,
right.
Because I know one of the things we've talked about before is that we're not interested in the borough being a landlord in that regard.
Right.
And so just to kind of flush that out so that we can think about how to proceed and make decisions based on the request.
Right. Well, the other thing I was thinking is that building could be used for other things for the borough. It doesn't have to just be the food pantry, because basically we use it, 6-8 days a month. So there's plenty of opportunity if other groups have to meet or whatever, they could probably use that building. So. Yeah.
Well, Francine, thank you for the comment. It still doesn't look like Nelson is able to connect. Is there anything else you want to share, Francine, before I move on to the next public comment?
I don't think so. I just have here that we have used that building for voting, eye exams and glasses, insurance information, healthy eating presentations, UPMC at home, and they even gave COVID shots out. So, like I said, it could be a multi-use building, and it's so centrally located that it would be difficult for the clients to go other places. And I think I'm done. And I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Francine. It looks like Josh has a question.
Not a question. I just wanted to know, I looked up, it looks like they have been dropping the price on the property about on a monthly basis. So the property did start at $195. It dropped to $179 on June 16th. And 5 days ago, they dropped it to $169. So it does seem like they are. It dropped again just a few days ago. So it looks like they are trying to, pretty aggressively drop the price on it. So
right.
I just wanted to note that.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Francine, for your comments. And again, thanks for all the work. I mean, I've seen firsthand the benefits of the community that the food pantry is.
And you also.
Yeah, thanks. All right, let's, I don't know if someone was helping Nelson. He still hasn't connected to audio. Let's jump over him, and if he's able to get on, we can circle back to him. But the other public comment, the third public comment that was submitted was from Ms. Erin Hinson with concerns about Varsity Street or Varsity Road. I'm not sure which it is. So Ms. Hinson, feel free to share your public comment. The floor is yours.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for giving us the time here. I'm here with my mother, who is the homeowner. So it's Varsity Road. It's at the end of Harvard Avenue. And I'm also here with two other people who live on the road during the summer. And so we have now, I would say, some pretty serious concerns about the state of the road and our ability to use it on an everyday basis, both the upper road that has 3 houses that use it. Our house, 1700 Harvard, and 7332 Varsity Road, but also the lower half of the road that is used by pretty much every resident who lives on Harvard and impacts a lot of houses on Whipple as well. So I had emailed the borough earlier in this year and was told that it would be passed along to Public Works. And then my neighbor, Mark McKenzie, who wasn't able to be here, but who owns the properties of 1700 Harvard and 7332 Varsity Road, said that he had someone out from the borough to look at the road in February. And we've had repairs done on it throughout the last 10 or 15 years, but it's usually just been patchwork. And so when the borough person came out and looked at it in February, they said, oh, this is way more than just a patch job. It's going to have to wait until the summer. And he has since been down to the borough building to pay some kind of property bill or something, I'm not sure, and brought it up again with the borough and asked for an update on it, and was not given a adequate or a sufficient update. And so our primary concerns are that it's already impacting access to the road, not just for us, but for deliveries. My mom and I had to get a new dryer delivered, and it was delayed by several weeks because the truck that they brought could not pass up the road. And my mother is 78 and not in the best of health. And I worry that emergency services, should we need them, would not be able to access the upper part of the road. We're all worried about car damage, and none of the ones of us that live on the upper half of the road drive down the bottom half of the road because there is such a big pothole down there. And so there are, as I said, there's 3 properties that use the upper half, and then there's 18 properties that use the lower half, and then the lower half goes down to Monongahela. And so every like the post office trucks, the garbage trucks and recycling trucks, every Amazon delivery truck, every everyday traffic all has to go down that way because Varsity is one way. And if you get past Princeton, you have to keep going down that way. So there's a lot of traffic. And then there's 8 properties on Whipple and 1 on Monongahela that are impacted by the erosion. Even if they don't necessarily use the road is starting to erode down into their property in some substantial chunks at this stage. So in total, I counted that there are 27 properties that are impacted probably on a daily basis by the state of the road. And so we just wanted to make this comment and make an appeal to get it hopefully on the calendar and see what next steps we need to take as residents to move this project forward.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Ms. Hinson. In fact, when I saw the request come in for the public comment, I was like, I actually don't even know that I know where Varsity Road is. So I had to Google that, but I do now know where it is.
Yeah, until we had Google Maps, nobody knew where it was. Even like local pizza delivery places would be like, I didn't know this road existed. So yeah. We know it can be kind of an unknown or a forgotten part of Swissvale, which is why I kind of wanted to get some numbers behind it. So it's not just the 3 of us, the 3 households that live up the road, but a lot of people use it, and it's in a pretty abysmal state, as a lot of roads around the country are, or around the town are, we know. So
yes. Mr. Bacci or Mr. D'Ambrosio, if one of you during your reports could comment on kind of where that is. And then I do have another request kind of tangentially related to that, but I want to give Mr. Miser an opportunity to speak his mind.
Thank you. Ms. Hinson, thank you for coming on and sharing this with us. You know, again, I would agree with Mr. Ansel. This is the first I was aware of Varsity. And so it's good when we can learn these things and get some visibility on what's going on with our residents. So thank you. You spoke to 2 things, both the condition of the road itself and then concerns of erosion down into the properties on Whipple. the concern with the road surface itself, is that primarily potholes and missing, pavement along the street? Is that the main concern there?
Yeah, so on the upper half of the road, there's literally like a gouge, and I took a bunch of pictures of the road that I can send to anybody that would like to see them. But on the upper half, our half of the road, there's literal gouges where the trucks have run, like rivets into, and at some points they're oh yeah, that's a good point. At some points they're close to a foot deep. And so it can make getting up and down the road very difficult. And my mom just brought up the point as well. And as in terms of services getting up the road, we've had a problem in the last couple of winters with the snowplow coming up the road as well, and like clearing the road. Because it's so difficult for trucks to get up and down. And my uncle that lives next door in the summer has a truck, and he's concerned about, we're all concerned about our cars really. And then on the lower half of the road, there is a giant pothole that is at some points now also a foot deep and probably 2 to 3 feet in circumference. So it starts with like little bits of chunks, and then as we all know, the more it doesn't get seen to, and the hotter temperatures and the expansion, they just keep getting bigger. So yeah, on the bottom half, and I should say, I didn't say this, there's several residents who live on Whipple who park on that lower half of Varsity. And so the reason we don't go down the road is because one half of it is a pothole, and then the other half is parked cars. And so I would assume they have a great difficulty getting down the road. And if you're coming down Harvard, it's a brick road, and you can't see the state of the road around the corner. And that's actually where the big pothole is. So I can't imagine that like people who are just driving down as everyday traffic just bottom out in that pothole. So yeah, it is both, and to have a long-winded answer to your question.
and the erosion that you noted, is that primarily on the upper part or both? Is it along the entire stretch? Okay.
Both. It's going, because that's the way the rainwater. Mm-hmm. And so we've just noticed, my neighbor, Mark McKenzie, has put in bamboo along a part of it that's kind of blocking some of it. But once you get past the bamboo, you can see the road breaking off and going down. And we've had some of our neighbors on Whipple have built fences around their backyards that have kind of stopped maybe some of it going into their yard. But you can definitely, if you just walk along it, you can see the erosion that's going down into the properties on Whipple.
Yeah, I can. I'm looking here at Google Maps while we're talking, and actually, they just did a pass in July of this year on the lower part of Varsity, so it's an updated image. So I can definitely see what you're saying there as far as the splitting off of the road on the Whipple side and whatnot. So thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Yeah, Deneen.
Josh, are you able to share your screen with us so we can all just take a look from an aerial view? I mean, I'm very familiar with it and have.
Yep. Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yep. Just a second here. I'll just share this window here. Let's see.
Yeah, you can actually see it on Street View.
Yeah, that's what I'm on here.
But I was doing the same thing.
Are you able to see my screen now?
Okay, that's the platform. Yeah.
Is it showing?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
down towards the bottom where that hole is started.
Yeah.
That hole. Yes. That hole is much bigger now.
Right.
Deeper. Yeah. And then
over here on the right, is this where you can see it seems like the road is broken away from the main road. And I can also see, with Street View, you can do multiple dates. So if I go back to 2011 here, you can see this lower part of the upper part is actually in decent condition. And you can see how much that's degraded in the past 12 years.
Yeah. And you can see particularly on the left-hand side, kind of like literal divots that like the truck use has kind of created. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, bless Google Maps.
Yeah. That's right. Thanks, Josh, for your technology contribution. So Ms. Hinson, I'll have, as I asked either Mr. Batcher or Mr. D'Ambrosio, who's our Director of Public Works, to comment on it during their reports later in the meeting. The other thing that I wanted to ask specifically, again, I don't know if this is Mr. Batchy, Mr. D'Ambrosio, or a combination of the two, but I know we had at our last meeting allocated some money for paving. What would, I know for me as a council member would be really helpful, and I don't know if other council members feel similarly, but to have a sense of where are, I mean, we hear a lot of roads that are bad. And so, what is kind of the priority list at this point in time? Where, for instance, for our, I understand if you don't want to make it public, but at least for our eyes to see kind of where Harvard would or not Harvard, Varsity would be, or where some of these other places we've talked about. So I think something like that would be helpful for us, at least for me going forward.
Just to update you on that, Jordan and I were going to put a priority list together for next month's meeting, and along with cost estimate with Mr. Ziskal, so that we can have and possibly bid this out. This stuff probably won't get done this year because, I mean, it is already the August meeting next week. Next month will be the September meeting. By the time we award bids, will be October. But we could award bids and hold them for first thing in the spring, and then we could do all these projects. It's just the timing of this is not really conducive to getting because a lot of the paving companies are already have their work booked for the year. But if we make it clear, that it can be for into next year, they may bid it a little cheaper going forward. But yeah, we will give you a priority list. There's a number of roads he and I have been talking about, and it far exceeds the amount that we have to spend. So we're going to have to try and decide which ones are priorities over the others. There were a couple that we had to defer a few years ago that we bid out for lack of funds, which were Scheuer and it was the last section of Shorter, and we'd like to try to get that one in, but it really is not as bad as the rest as some of these other ones. We did say last month that we would put some money toward Mansion Place. There's some areas on Columbia Avenue that need dugouts. There's some areas on Lomont that near Dalgate that need dug out and redone. Commercial Street is in pretty deplorable condition. Nevada Street's pretty bad. Collingwood Avenue is not too great. So, we're just going to have to make some hard decisions, recommendations for you guys for next month, but that will be an agenda item for discussion at the end of August.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Batchy. Mayor Swartzwelder.
As I recall, I don't know who attended the conference when we were in Seven Springs. A woman was presenting grants that are written specifically for alleyways with runoff that go towards the river or in our 9 Mile Run watershed. And they were pretty adamant that they could get us a grant. And I do have all that information. If Greg, if you don't have it, I can dig it up and get it to you, but that might be an avenue to go towards, since that is their specific scope of work. They fix alleys that have severe runoff problems.
Yeah, if you have that handy, please send it over to me.
All right, thanks, Mr. Miser, and then we're going to move on because the purpose is not to deliberate during public comment, but go ahead.
Sorry. Well, and Chris, I just wanted to comment on what you said, because I do think there's kind of an overarching discussion here. I do think, and we can discuss it under Public Works or whatnot, that it would be good for that priority list, even if it's not a detailed priority list, something to that effect to be made transparent and public, where people can at least see, like, is our road in a 1-year scope? Is our road in a 2-year scope? Is our road in a 10 years from now, if we have the money, we'll repave your road, kind of thing. I think it's important that residents kind of at least know where they fall, with their streets and whatnot. So definitely that's something I'd like to look into if we can.
Thanks, Mr. Miser. Thank you, Ms. Hinson, for your comments and bringing this to our attention. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the time.
Sure. All right, let's move on to item 4. Mr. Kirksey is still not connected to audio, so we're going to have to keep moving on. Item 4, presentation of the building plans by Core Architect.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Connor McGee. I'm the project manager for Core Architects. So I'll be representing the design team tonight, taking you through where we are in design, and then we'll be making our application to move forward to bidding. So at this point, we're at our 90% set, together with our consultants and with the borough's consultants. We've worked on the site. We have put out to bid our asbestos and our demolition packages. And now the next phase will be the new construction. So I'm going to share my screen and just take us through a couple of images here. And can you just confirm if you can see it now? All right, thank you. So unfortunately, a sad state of affairs with the old municipal building. It was really used until the very last moment of its useful life. So we did do the evaluation, understood that really we could not salvage much of this building at all to make it useful in the future, for the future of Swissvale, specifically the community as well. So we took that into consideration. We took some acknowledgements of the existing buildings, such as the brickwork and the detailing, to incorporate that into the design. So there's a lot of really important features here that we tried to keep with Swissvale, with the recognition of the municipal building, and with that we get to keep the site was an added bonus. There's no change in location. Everybody knows where you're going from here, and it'll be a really good improvement for the center of Swissvale. So this image here is taken from the intersection of South Braddock and Roslyn, and sort of looking back towards the fronts of the building. This is the entire site that runs the block between Roslyn and Ardmore. And then we've done some lot consolation. Excuse me, sorry, I have a dry mouth. We did a lot consolidation to make this into one site that will provide additional parking and also a future basketball court. So here's our current site plan now. So I've changed the aspect. So we're technically looking south down Roslyn Street, looking from South Braddock into the entrance of the building. So as you probably remember from the old building, the grade drops off quite significantly from front to back. This is probably the highest point on the site, and then the lowest point being behind the building. So, you know, considering that, we use the site in an interesting way where we could have that basement level and utilize that for our police department. It'll be secure. More than 60% of it is undergrade. And it also has its own parking that will provide electric vehicle charging stations as well, all in an effort to keep this building useful for as long as we possibly can. Like I said, we're also conditioning the site so we can include a basketball court, extra parking. There will be, excuse me, there will be 2 handicap spots, and there will be also 2 designated drop-off spots for parents and at-risk people. We're also providing a semi-enclosed outdoor plaza on the corner. Now, this will be part of a community room that will be in this area here. I've also included this area, this shaded area, like I said, really planning for the future. For a solar array installation, so that the municipal building will generate its own power. There'll be this beacon, or at least a symbol for moving forward. So at the moment, and this is actually quite impressive for the municipal building, is the small footprint. Our design team was incredibly efficient. Worked to get this down to its absolute minimum square footage. So total, we are at a little over 15,000 square feet with a 7,500 square foot floor plate for the basement and for the South Braddock first floor level. I've just kind of provided this just so you get orientation on which way the building is compared to the site. So north being down where my cursor is, the corner of the intersection. And as you enter the building, this is how as we'll sort of view the orientation of the floor plans. So this is the police department. I'll zoom in a little bit because I understand that the your screen's probably not as big as the one I'm using. So, like I said, this level is 60% undergrade. We use the site to provide a lot of cost saving here. There's an incredible amount of security design considerations that go into providing the police department. So this really helped us out, kept cost of ballistics and blast-proof construction down to a minimum. So this is accessed down Roslyn Street. We'll pull into a parking lot. There'll be a public entrance on grade with accessible parking. There'll be stairs back up to Roslyn Street, or you can enter the building and either go up the stairs, use the elevator, or speak to a police receptionist. So as you come up the building, we're getting to our first floor. So this is our entrance. Excuse me. It's our entrance from South Braddock. And there's the stairs from the Roslyn Street entrance from the police department downstairs. Our lobby and pre-function to the left, we'll have the administration offices with a receptionist office right here, serving window, and also a tax office in the upper corner in direct line of sight, which will also have a receptionist window. We've provided 6 public bathrooms, which is enough to take care of everybody who's using the multi-purpose room at once, or if there's a considerably large council meeting. We've provided this green area that I've highlighted. It is also multi-purpose. It's typically storage, a warming kitchen. So if there's a function, people can cater and use both spaces as well. And then a conference room that doubles as the caucus. Currently, I didn't put this on here, unfortunately, before I had it printed. This is about a 1,700 square foot council chambers and multi-purpose room. The outdoor plaza is approximately 2,300 square feet, and our administration offices are 2,400 square feet. We're also going to be rejuvenating this corner, providing some benches, which will also double up as security. Access stairs, which will be monumental. They'll have partitions in between. There'll also be some installed site furniture and planters. The surface will be a decorative concrete, and we're going to provide bicycle racks, access ramps for wheelchairs. And then we're also going to be providing a small pad for the existing Veterans Memorial that we can also develop, and providing a new media board that is currently in the parking lot next door. This will be interactive and updatable for future events that are going on at the borough. So here's our first look at the exterior of the building, looking from South Braddock towards the entrance. The Veterans Memorial in place with our LED sign is visible from the intersection as well as from South Braddock. I'll go into a little bit of detail with the design choices, where we're keeping the blended orange and buff brick from the existing building. Again, acknowledging that that building served for so many years, it's quite impressive. So we're also going to be reusing some of the brick from the existing building as well, all in recognition. But we're also stepping it up. We're making it a little bit more modern. We're providing a hard base And all of these materials are designed and thought through to last as long as possible, maintenance free as possible, while also, considering that it wants to look timeless as well. So that was really our effort here. Moving on. This is our exterior plaza standing on the sidewalk looking in. Obviously there's an event going on in the background. There's tents, the planters that I was talking about as well. This will be a large area to hold any kind of events using the multi-purpose room that will lead directly out. It's semi-covered, and there will also be some site furniture provided as well. You'll also come down where my cursor is. This is the accessible ramp, and enter through the building along a walkway. The administration offices are in this wing, and our community room and council chambers are in this wing. Here we have the rear of the building looking at the police entrance. Our accessible spots are over here to the right. The designated drop-off spots would be here to my right behind me as the photograph is taken. We have the future basketball court shown at the corner of the site where the police parking wraps around the building. The police department, again, we really considered how much design that we could take into consideration to make this as safe as possible, while also keeping costs down. So that a lot of the decisions for the size of the windows, the heights, they're all taken into thought and sort of applied to the building that way. But our large glass entrance, splitting the building, so police is visible immediately as you walk in, and then as you go up the stairs, we have a really nice use conference area and caucus. You can also access your parking and climb up the stairs to round the building towards Roslyn Street. I have an interior rendering what we think that the council chambers could look like. Again, we're not trying to go, gold gilded and leather bound, but we are considerate, want to make this as timeless as possible. And a lot of that will have to do with the type of materials that we're going to be using, whether they're going to be sustainable and locally sourced. The size and the scale of the room compared to the materials as well is also important for keeping that timeless appearance. And we'll also be considering that this is going to be a multi-purpose room, that furniture and pieces can be taken away, stored, and brought back out relatively easily. Towards the back, then we have two access doors that lead directly onto the exterior plaza. And then one more shot. Of the building looking towards the council chambers in the evening, and typically these meetings would be held. And this is our final image. I hope you like it. So if you do have any questions, please feel free.
Connor, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm super excited for this project. I think it looks beautiful, and I'm really looking forward to. So thank you to you and CORE and the building committee and all the hard work that has gone into getting us to this point. Go ahead, Josh.
Thank you.
Sorry, I feel like I have questions on everything tonight. I apologize. But for just a couple things. One, and I know this was stated in a previous meeting, but just to have it at the front of my mind, how does this gross square footage of the building compare to the existing building?
We're approximately, we're a little bit smaller from my last check. So we were actually able to be more economical with less space. And that really is in the design of the racetrack that we've provided for the offices, where we're providing very few kind of like dead end corridors, things that wouldn't considerably be usable at all. So I can provide that as kind of a cost breakdown, as well as what the older building, or sorry, the existing building, excuse me, had, and what we're providing in the new.
Okay. And second question is, but when the basketball court was mentioned, it was discussed as a future. Is that not going to be in scope for the initial project at this point?
We're including it for bidding purposes, with the idea that if our bids are a little bit out of scope, a little bit too much, that would be a possible cost saving exercise where we could delay that phase of the site development for a year or two down the road.
Okay. And I just want to echo this is exciting. It's exciting to start to see this project come together. So thank you for all the hard work.
One small thing, I noticed that the War Memorial is moved off of the front now. I'm not sure, how council and the building committee will want to address that, if we want to stick with this plan or go back to having it in the front. It's something we can talk about.
Yeah, just that was something that we actually realized a lot later than we probably should have. And actually, this is probably the best photo to sort of explain what we're dealing with in this area. So here's the existing condition. We have the flagpole, but we also missed this signal tower. So where we have this, because we're not going to be able to replace that with the budget confines that we're working within, we have to leave this, and this kind of like made the area a little bit inaccessible. We can work on different ways. This is by no means a completed design, but we felt that in the space and the time that we had, rather than trying to force it in and being wrong without considering it, deciding to keep it in its original position.
I understand. What's really beautiful about this whole plan, and you alluded to part of it in your presentation, is that a person who's in a wheelchair can literally come right in off of South Braddock Avenue and through the plaza and then right into the administrative floor. Or a person in a wheelchair could go down Roslyn Street and enter without any steps or anything into the police department, which I think is wonderful.
Any other questions for Connor or Core Architects?
No questions, but this is an amazing demonstration. I'm highly excited. It's giving us 5-10 years down the line, and it's going to look good sitting on top of that hill. So thank you for all your hard work.
Yes, thanks so much, Connor. Well, if there are questions, if there are questions that come up after the fact, feel free to reach out to the building committee. That goes for the public as well. It's Mr. Price, Miss Alfonso Wells, and Miss Scales, who are currently seated on that team, that committee right now. So again, thank the three of you for your hard work. All right, well, let's keep moving on in the meeting and move to item 5, which is our agenda items. So we have a number of agenda items. Connor, I don't know if you are able to stop sharing your screen so that we can see each other in the public. Thank you so much. So let's move on to item 5A as we keep moving forward. This is discuss a resolution for the RCAP grant. Mr. Batchy.
Yes, sir. The RCAP grant, which we received for the building construction, the $2.5 million, they want a resolution passed stating that we commit to the interim financing for the project and to the matching funds. We did this a year and a half ago when we submitted the application. However, they want to revise one at this point. So, and I've dealt with these RCAP grants before. There's a lot of duplication of efforts throughout the process. So we may be revisiting the same thing. You're going to say, didn't we already do that? because we did, but they want a revised, updated one. So it's just a administrative thing that we need to pass this resolution at our meeting next week.
Any questions for Mr. Batchy on that? All right, let's move on to item 5B, discuss a resolution for the Commonwealth Finance Authority Multimodal Fund Grant.
There is money available for from the Commonwealth Finance Authority Multimodal Fund that closes on Monday. One of the things we had talked about previously this year was putting in money through Chris DeLuzio's office for streetscape on Monongahela and Church Street, Monongahela Avenue and Church Streets. Mr. DeLuzio, or Congressman DeLuzio's chief of staff, informed me that that project is not moving forward. Part of it's actually not in the congressman's district. So they had other projects that were, they thought were more fundable at the time. So Commonwealth Financing Authority will pay for this type of thing. We have we have used this money in the past for the streetscape on Washington, Noble, and Waverly. And the good news is that they've waived the requirement for municipalities that we don't have to put up a 30% match anymore. So this would be to continue the streetscape off of Washington Street, basically from the Denniston Street parking lot to Irvine Street next to the fire department, at a cost of $589,000 to install 12 street lamps, 8 street trees and tree pits, all the wiring, conduit, and everything, the electric box, the new transformer, 8 handicap curb cuts, and 7 handicap curb cuts and 8 new crosswalks, which I was just proposing the piano key style that's on Monongahela now. But they'd be the thermoplastic ones, which last about 5 to 7 years without needing painting. And that, like I said, total cost with engineering inspection, everything is $589,000.
Thanks, Mr. Batch. Any questions on that grant request? All right, let's move on to 5C, discuss the crossing guard contract.
The crossing guard contract expires on August 30th of 2023. And I met with them once briefly and once a little more in detail. And they didn't ask for a lot. And the recommendation, I did run this past police committee briefly last week. The terms of it are a 5-year agreement that would start on September 1st, 2023. A 60 cent an hour increase beginning September 1st, and then 50 cents an hour each year of the contract after that, increasing their uniform allowance from $300 to $400 annually. A revised bereavement leave section because they're part-time employees, but the thing is they work 5 days a week. And one of the things is it treats them like part-time employees, like they don't work 5 days a week in the bereavement section. So it actually brings it in line with other contracts. And we also added stepchildren, step parents, a couple things like that, because we do have a lot of blended families now. And the old contract was silent on that and actually did not give you any time to grieve with time off. It would remove the residency requirement in the contract and provide language that specifies who we have to purchase life insurance from, because the contract actually says it must be purchased through Boston Life. And then the last thing was they asked for Family and Medical Leave Act, because as part-time employees, you have to work 1,250 hours annually in order to qualify for Family and Medical Leave Act. Their schedule is only 720 hours. So what we discussed was a benefit for them where if you worked 450 hours a year, you'd be eligible for Family and Medical Leave Act. Basically, it's unpaid, but to care for yourself or to care for a sick family member, and your job, and under the FMLA Act, it's 60 days a year. For them it'd be 30 because they don't work quite the time that everybody else does. But it would just basically be a job guarantee for them that no one's going, that they're not going to be fired for taking time off to care for themselves or family members, because the majority of our crossing guards are older, and they're concerned about coming forward with health issues, and that they would be replaced for not coming to work. And that's the general crux of the contract. I mean, it's just the raises are 3.7% the first year, down to 2.73% the third year or the fifth year. $100 a year extra in uniform allowance. And basically that's the only economic items, other than if they do take time off for bereavement.
Any questions for Mr. Batchy? All right, and just to clarify with this, I know we are talking about the school crossing guards. This is a joint venture with the school district. We pay half. Well, I think we pay the full and the school district reimburses us half. Is that how the agreement currently works?
Yes, but they are 100% our employees, so the contract is only between us and the employees. And then the school district, whatever we negotiate, we have an agreement with the school district that they reimburse 50% of actual costs.
Just to put that in there. All right, let's move on to 5D, discuss vacant property registrations.
We're using a company called ProChamps for vacant property registrations. And what that does is when ProChamps sees a like a foreclosure or anything like that go up, they reach out to the bank or the school district or the taxing authority, whoever foreclosed on it, and tell them that they're required to register the property. And then when they register the property, the ProChamps would notify the borough, so then we can have it on our radar if we need to mow the grass. Keep an eye on it, for people breaking into it, stuff like that. Also, ProChamps charges a $300 fee, $200 of which goes to the borough and $100 to them. Unfortunately, ProChamps went out of business a few months ago. So if we want to continue registering properties, which I think we should, we need to find a new vendor for that. Now, Mr. Wilhelm and myself did speak with a company called the WS Group. And basically they do pretty much the exact same type of work as ProChamps did. One of the people that was one of the initial employees of ProChamps, he actually moved to the WS Group about 3 years ago. And he is their business development person. He's who we spoke to. Part of the problem is finding companies that do these this type of work is difficult. Now, the mayor did forward me something today from another company. We could certainly reach out to them to see, what they're offering, and we could see if we could get that meeting before next Wednesday to see what they're offering and, how we'd like to proceed. But I think it's a good thing to have a registry. And at this point, I'd recommend going with the WS Group. But like I said, we could also reach out to the other one and see if maybe they have a better deal and see if we're comfortable with them.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. I think it doesn't hurt to get another quote. If we're able to get that in before next Wednesday, it just gives us ability to make a decision.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk to them before Wednesday and report back to you.
Thanks. Any questions for Mr. Batchy on this item? All right, let's move on to 5E, discuss hiring of part-time firefighters.
We have a couple applications for part-time firefighters that the fire committee is going to interview on Monday evening. It's always a constant challenge of filling the schedule, because especially now this time of year, we have one firefighter who is a school teacher. We have another one who's an athletic trainer at a university. So they've had a lot of availability over the summer, but now that they're going back to school in the fall, their daytime availability and their availability even into the evening is much less. Because they they have their school priorities, and we've had a couple of people that reduce their hours because of their part-time or their full-time jobs, and a couple that have moved on from the department. So we need to replace a couple of these people to to fill the schedule. And this is just one of those things, like we've talked about before, whether we have 5 people on the roster or 200 people on the roster, there's only a certain number of hours and a certain number of shifts offered every week. So there's no cost to adding more part-time firefighters. There's only, it just gives a bigger pool of people to help fill the schedule, because the number of shifts every day are always the same.
Thanks. Any questions for Mr. Batchy? Well, moving right along, the item that was alluded to earlier in our meeting, item 5F, discuss relocation of the Veterans Memorial.
At last month's meeting, Gib and Mary Miller had provided public comment requesting that the council consider moving the Veterans Memorial to the parklet at the corner of Church Street and South Braddock. One of the things, and council had said, that the building committee should discuss this. The building committee did discuss it at their meeting last Monday, and it seemed to be the consensus of the building committee that they would like to see it stay at the borough building. Connor did have it shown right in front of the flagpole, which was a really nice view, but as he said, he kind of missed the fact that there's that strain pole for the traffic signals and the big traffic controller on that pole that kind of makes it difficult to locate there. So basically, this doesn't need to be an agenda item for next week, but we just need to come to some kind of consensus as to whether you want the monument to stay where it is or stay on the property. Regardless of where it goes, it will be removed during construction, stored, and put back so that it doesn't get damaged. So there's no chance of damaging it.
Yeah. So, as Mr. Becci said, we don't need to necessarily have a vote on this next week, but let's see if there is a general consensus. My understanding is the consensus of the building committee was to leave it at the current site. Is that, not necessarily location, but at that plot? Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So how do others feel about that?
I sort of like to see it stay up at the new borough site because it'll have greater visibility, and I think more people will see it and read it. I even wonder if there would be room up on the plaza itself somewhere where it could be tastefully displayed, and it would be, in the forefront for anyone that would be going to council meetings or to the borough on business. It's just my thought. I sort of feel that it would kind of be lost down in that little parklet and just orphaned down there, but I don't know what others think.
I'm happy to see it stay. I think it has a legacy and a history there. I think it could be nice at the little parklet, but one of those if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of things.
I was literally going to say the same thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I agree. I think that it should say.
And don't break it.
Yes.
Yeah, just let it stay if it can.
So, is that, Mr. Batch, is that enough of a consensus for you? I know Mr. Meiser hasn't, he might have stepped away for just a moment. But I know Ms. Scales is on the building committee and
Ms. Alfonso Wells also, and the three on the committee felt that it was good to stay, and Ms. Stribling and Mr. Quinn both, and Mr. Meiser seems improved also. Okay,
great. So I will just leave it to the building committee to kind of take that next step of you all can vet the location, whether it stays where he put it or if there's another location on that plot that you want to look at. So we'll leave that in your capable hands.
Okay.
All right, ready to move on? All right, let's move on to item FG, discuss the traffic signal at Monongahela Avenue and Washington Street.
As you're aware, the Washington Street Bridge is closed and there's minimal traffic on Washington Street coming off of Washington Street onto Monongahela Avenue at this point. I had a couple of residents bring it to my attention that they feel it's ridiculous to have to sit there for a minute to a minute and a half while the light's green on Washington Street when there's absolutely no traffic. And they're probably right. It's no traffic's coming off of there. There's really no reason to go up there unless you're going to the businesses on Washington. Nobody's using it as a throughway anymore. Talk to Mark Swecko at Gibson Thomas Engineers, who we've used as our traffic engineer in the past, and asked him, what the process would be to remove or suspend that and put stop signs there. And he said no traffic study would really be necessary other than they would do some traffic counts to show that there's no traffic on Washington Avenue. He said you can't do anything with PennDOT without justification. Now, to clarify, we own the signal, we own the roads, but PennDOT under state law has to permit all traffic signals and has to meet a warrant for a signal. Now, without traffic on Washington Street right now, you can show that there are no warrant, that it doesn't warrant a signal because of the lack of traffic. One of the things I'm concerned about, though, is the traffic on Monongahela Avenue. We have a lot of people complain about speeding in areas around the borough, Monongahela being one of them. And if we open up that light and just leave it green or leave it flashing yellow all the time, we're going to have a speedway there. And Mark agreed and thought, that we should do something there. And his suggestion was maybe to put a 3-way stop sign in there. But he would have to get permission from PennDOT to do that, to suspend the signal until the bridge is reopened. And then when it's reopened, we would have to go back and look at to see if it warrants reactivating the light. So the question is, does council want to leave the light the way it is, just leave it as a functioning traffic signal, which does slow down traffic there, or do we want to look at putting stop signs in? And you're looking at cost of a couple $1,000s to do all the paperwork, the permit revision, the suspension of the traffic signal through PennDOT. So there is a cost here of a few $1,000s.
Thanks, Mr. Batchy. You and I had a conversation about this when we were preparing the agenda, and I think actually my perception may have changed a little bit since then, because there is no vehicular traffic at this time for the most part, but 4 weeks from today, Woodland Hills School District is going to be beginning school again. And I know there's a bus stop right there at that intersection. We have a crossing guard who is, she is phenomenal. She is very assertive at making sure cars stop. She will throw herself out in front of traffic if need be. And I do worry that even with just stop signs, we've seen, we've had residents talk about how on McClure Avenue, folks are blowing through stop signs, both at Tonette and at Aurelius, Nevada. And so I really am fine on a stop sign or keeping the light, but I want to make sure that we are taking into consideration our kids and that is a high pedestrian traffic area for those kids.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people there are a lot of people that cross there, a lot of pedestrians across there, not just the students, and there are many buses a day. It's not only a school bus stop, it's Port Authority or Pittsburgh Regional Transit stop. There's a lot of activity at that intersection other than just cars.
Ms. Scales, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I was just going to say similar to you, Chris. I mean, it may seem dead now, and I live literally right here. So the traffic does pick up on this street because a lot of cars take this road to Kennywood or the water park. And then we have the barbershops here, and then we also have Wilson. So there is a good amount of traffic that flows on this street. It's just during certain periods of time. So I don't know about the stop sign because we do have issues with people actually stopping at the stop sign. And I mean that at some point that street, the bridge is going to be fixed or whatever. And at some point that, that street is going to be used again. So I don't know about spending money to convert it to a 3-way stop sign. And then we have to turn around and use the lights again because no one's stopping at the stop signs.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Scales, for those comments. Mr. Miser?
Yeah, in regards to, I agree that stop signs can be somehow easy to miss for people and they just blow through them. Is it possible to have just a constant flashing red utilizing the existing signal at that intersection? So there's still a signal light, but it's a flashing red where if people have to come to a complete stop, but as long as it's clear, then they can proceed.
It is possible, but I think if you're going to use that, you can't use the flashing red as a permanent stop. You'd have to put a stop sign in there also. I mean, you would, if you did that, you'd have to have stop signs all 3 directions plus the red. You could use the red flash as like an extra safety measure to get people's attention, but you can't use it solely by itself.
And frankly, half the time when lights go out like that, I don't know that people even know what that means sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm afraid because that's a high pedestrian area. Like Chris says, with the bus stop is there, and then that's the school bus stop as well when the kids go back into school.
Would we be able to, just kind of as a follow-up, would we be able to, I know some traffic lights during certain hours will use the flashing red, lower traffic hours, and then higher traffic hours that will operate as a normal signal. Would we have that ability?
Not there because that signal controller is not capable of it.
Okay.
It's a very old signal controller that just functions on a timer for the red, yellow, green function.
Okay, thank you.
Chief Wilhelm.
Yes, I just want to make a comment because the fire department's kind of located right between that one and Church Street. We already have a hell of a time, even with the limited traffic, of getting our fire apparatus out on the Monongahela a lot of times because of the flow of traffic. And sometimes that traffic light is the only thing that gives us some pause to get out because people disregard sirens and red lights. It seems like more and more often than they used to. So I'd like you to take that into consideration as well. And one other thing, just a concern, is even if we do the traffic study and there's not a lot of traffic on Washington, and if we remove the light, well, Mr. Batcher, would that affect us putting the light back in later if the traffic on Washington doesn't meet a criteria or requirement? Because the traffic on Washington, even when the bridge was open, is nowhere like it was when the light was originally put in, obviously.
If you take the signal out altogether, you would be starting from scratch when the bridge reopens. That's why he had recommended suspending the signal permit, and we would just put bags over the lights so that that there weren't so that people knew not to look at the lights, and we would just disable the lights, and then when the bridge reopened, we would turn the lights back on. He said there is a process there, though, that you have to flash the signals for a number of days. You put the stop signs in, you have to flash the signals, and you have to build the signal down, from a full signal down to nothing. And then you have to build it back up later, where you put the signals back on, flash them for a couple of weeks, put signs up that said signal to be activated on this date. But yeah, you're right. If it is totally removed, then we would also have to bring it up to current standards with strain poles and such. We wouldn't be able to mount them back on the utility poles like they are mounted at that intersection. So, I mean, there would be a significant cost in replacing it later if it meets a warrant, which it may not.
So what I've heard tonight is two council members, myself and Ms. Scales, who sound like we are in favor of leaving it as it is. Mr. Miser, I asked some questions. I didn't hear a particular one side or the other in there. Are there others who feel that the traffic light should stay as it is, or would like to see a study done to see if it should be changed?
I feel like it should stay. I've even touched base with you before, even about traffic on Noble Street. I feel like my fear is mostly not Swissvale residents, but people outside of Swissvale coming through and taking advantage of that traffic light being gone. So I think it should stay.
And definitely, like you said, Chris, with the kids starting back to school, traffic is going to pick up. It's most important for safety reasons that we have a stoplight there that'll be able to manage the traffic.
Yeah, and Chris, just to put a capstone, I was curious if there were any other configurations we could use, but in the case that we can't, I'm in favor of it staying as well.
Maybe we could adjust the timing a little bit, keep the light where it is, but allow it to remain green longer on Monongahela for the flow of traffic.
I will check with the traffic engineer if that needs a study also, because sometimes even little things like that. But yeah, that's something we may be able to do. But let me check with him to see what options we have without having to do a study.
Yeah, that's it's a good outside of the box consideration. I know there, it sounds like there are some residents that are a little frustrated with it, and I understand that it's an inconvenience, but for the sake of safety, it sounds like there's a consensus of let's just, maybe do a little bit more research, but in general, we're in favor of it remaining as it is.
Okay. I will reach out to him and just see if we can change that timing a little bit to make it a little longer. But other than that, that's probably going to be the end of it. The end of the discussion for now.
Sounds good. Well, let's move on to item 5F, discuss returning to in-person meetings.
I sent a memo out to everyone on Monday, and basically it outlined three possible locations for meeting. Two of them are at the intermediate school where our offices are currently, one being in the auditorium, one being in a large classroom that we currently use. We've been showing some diversity videos and such. We use it for that, but it's one of the larger classrooms. it's about the same square footage as the old council chambers in the old borough building, but a little different configuration, more of a square than a rectangle. And then the Dixon School cafeteria, which Dr. Casagna said that we were welcome to use. So those are kind of our three
auditorium. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but auditorium. You said cafeteria.
That's
no, you did say cafeteria. I'm sorry. I was thinking you were still talking about the Evan Street.
Yeah,
ignore everything I said.
Evan Street Auditorium, Dixon School cafeteria. So, and I listed some pros and cons there, so I hope everybody had a chance to review it. One of the things that our concerns are as the staff is the technology we need to broadcast the meetings and such. We can't leave it at Dixon. We have to remove it. Dixon's probably the best location for the public to get to. I mean, there's plenty of parking there. It's very walkable. It's on a bus line. I mean, if someone from Regent Square wanted to take a bus down, it's on a bus line. There are a lot of positives for that site. But like I said, we do have to remove all of our equipment every time and get it back to the building and take an hour or so every night setting it up. And hopefully not damage any of the equipment while it's in transit, every 2 weeks at a time. One of the other things though that we could talk about later, but like as far as committee meetings, planning commission meetings, zoning hearing board meetings, stuff like that, those we may want to consider just doing at the intermediate school because they are sparsely attended, and I think we could do it in a classroom and not have to burden the school district to use their other facility every month. But as far as the council meetings go, I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons for each site. One of the cons with Dixon also too is it's all cafeteria tables that we would be sitting at, or we would have to bring our own folding tables and chairs in every month after hours. So those are the highlights of what was in the memo. I'll be quiet now so you guys can deliberate.
Go ahead, Josh. You unmuted.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, as I've stated in the past, I'm in favor of returning to in person. I can appreciate the challenges with each location, and those have at times given me pause as to if this is the right time to do that. But I want to make sure accessibility is there for all residents to be able to get there. But on the flip side, one of the things we encounter now, as we saw tonight and have seen several times, is people who have issues with technology have also been not able to comment or not able to attend virtually because of technology limitations. So I think we face accessibility challenges either way. One other thing I'm going to pull out of the blue, and obviously this would need to be looked into further, is a possible other venue, such as one that came to mind is the Wilkins School. They have a lot of space for meetings. They have, and if they would be open, and again, this would have to be discussion, but if they would be open to us holding council meetings there, it's on a bus line. It's more accessible for residents than the intermediate school, and we may not have the constraints of having to take the technology every time, break down everything like that. So, just wanted to throw that out there. I have not had that discussion with anybody at the Wilkins School or anything like that. If that's something people would be open to, I would be happy to reach out to the Wilkins School to see if it's a possibility. But that's just one other space that came to mind that may be able to bring two things together where we don't have to do, because the biggest con I see with Dixon is the having to remove and set up, and the setup and tear down time. And the biggest con I see with being up at the intermediate school is accessibility. And, at least the Wilkins School locations would, again, I wouldn't think it would be a great permanent location, but at least in this interim till the new building is built, I feel like it could be a possibility if they're open to it.
So just to kind of circle on what Mr. Miser said, I just want to suggest that there are kind of two pathways we can take right now. I mean, we've been kicking this down the road for a while now. We had talked about the end of May being kind of like our, kind of first deadline, if you will, soft deadline on this. And now we're at the end of July. I I think thinking outside the box and considering other options could be beneficial to try to maybe absolve some of those cons from some of the locations and maintain the pros. Do you all want to continue to delay this conversation to look into that idea, or do you want to say, you know what, we've waited long enough, we should make a decision based off the information we have?
I thought the auditorium selection that Greg had sounded very doable. I think one of the few downsides was simply that you'd have to run the wiring an extra long distance, but I thought
that's only a one-time. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's only a one-time thing, though.
Right.
Once we get it in, it's there.
But you mentioned it because of the size of the auditorium and the fact that council would likely be up on stage. It helps to create a buffer, because we are coming out of a pandemic and COVID still is around a certain point, and we have members of council that are concerned about, health dangers, but at least the auditorium, because of its size, helps to alleviate that.
What do others think? Go ahead, Mr. Stribling.
I actually like Josh's suggestion. Greg, thank you, first of all, for putting all that together and giving the pros and cons. But you still have to consider the main purpose of the meetings, which is for the residents to be able to get there. And if they lack transportation or they lack the ability to get there, then that's kind of living out a segment of maybe a society who might really want to be there. So I think we should kick it back a little and actually investigate the Wilkins. Is this fully functional? If it would hold the council meetings appropriately and include the ability for people to be able to be there who want to be there. And like Josh indicated, if it's on a bus line, that would be much more convenient than trying to have someone who might sincerely have an issue and want to be there but can't due to transportation issues or concerns.
Thanks, Mr. Stribling. Other comments?
I agree with Ms. Stribling. I feel like accessibility is a very important thing. And I think that if it's I think the location that's most accessible to the most residents will be the one I would go for.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quinn. Other comments? Mr. Price, would you be okay with us delaying a little longer to continue to investigate some of these sites? And I don't know, maybe even, Mr. Miser, if there are other, I know you suggested Wilkins School, but even if there were some other places that you or others would brainstorm to think, you know what, here's kind of on the Swissvale Flats, I guess we'll call it, as opposed to the Swissvale Slopes. If there are other sites that might be open and willing to host and to allow us to have space, but also to not have to tear down or some of the cons of the Dixon to be able to maintain. So why don't we do that? Were you going to say something, Mr. Miser?
Yeah, just to clarify, are there, just to make sure we don't start going down a road that we can't, are there any regulations or stipulations as to where we can meet? Obviously we're virtual right now, but just throwing could we meet at a church? Could we meet? I'm just thinking of different spaces within the community. Is there any regulation that says you can't meet at a house of worship or things like that as a council?
I would defer that to Mr. McTiernan, but I don't believe there's anything prohibiting us.
No, it's an interesting question because some codes and school districts and things have some restrictions on certain types of activities, but not boroughs. I don't think that would be.
Just thinking outside of the box, Madonna's just sitting there, vacant. I wonder if the diocese would be interested in some sort of short-term rental from the borough for a room or something.
It's another good suggestion. I think it's another one to kind of add to that list to investigate a little bit more. Yes, Ms. Scales.
My only comment is, wherever we decide to go, we just need to take into consideration the equipment that they have to transport so that the meetings can still be streamed live and be accessible virtually. And then whatever and whatever else that they have with them in preparation for the meetings. So I know when we were in person, one thing that Greg and before Greg Clyde, they would be able to do is make sure they have the agendas passed out and copies available for the public as well, along with our microphones and speakers and all of that. So all of that is involved with the council meetings as well. So we have to make sure we take that into consideration, that is something that's going to be involved with hosting the council meeting. So we definitely want accessibility, but we also have to take into consideration all the pieces of equipment and papers and everything else that they have to make sure the commute and transport, and then I guess pack back up if it's not at the actual Evans Street location.
Also, just sorry, were you done, Ms. Gales? Okay.
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. Also, just, I mean, if we are, exploring other spaces, just to remember and it's kind of what was hinted at, but technology. So for instance, something like Madonna, would there even be internet accessibility there for us to live stream, if the building is not being currently used? And again, I certainly welcome other venues, but that's one of the things I did think about the Wilkins School is they do have a full Wi-Fi network throughout the entire building and things along those lines. So Chris, I don't know what I completely hear your point about kicking this can down the road, and if we keep kicking it, we'll kick it until the new borough building's built. But do we maybe want to set and say, reach out to venues during this next month and then at the end of August, report our findings if we were able to find locations that are willing to host us, what the situation would be, so we at least have a timeline for continuing to move the discussion forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I would advocate for. I think that we had done some research, maybe we haven't found the perfect spot, and maybe that one's still out there and we can look at some of these places. Wilkins School, I mean, another suggestion would be like the first floor basement of the library, where we had the open mic night. I mean, that might be a space to look into that is accessible and on bus lines and similar. So yeah, now that we are more in back to a brainstorming phase, let's identify those. And, the worst case scenario, if none of those fall through, we've got Auditorium and Dixon that we can kind of duke it out over. Those are our fallbacks, and we know we have something, but I think at the end of August, we should kind of put a pin in this and move forward until we have our own building. Because when we have our own building, a lot of this is going to go away. But yeah, Mr. Miser.
No, the last thing I just wanted to say is I want, Mr. Vacci, I appreciate your work putting together the pros and cons. That was very helpful. I guess what I came away from after reading that pros and cons is I wasn't sure that we would be able to find a quorum within the council that would agree to any of those locations, because it seems like accessibility and airflow and space are all very important to different factions of the council. And I think we would be going around in circles with those three locations as they're currently stated. So I'm just hoping to find a location that we can get that quorum and move on. So.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Miser. And I mean, just to not to open up another can, but I think something else that goes along this conversation that I know we've talked a little bit about. And if people want to respond after I say this, that's fine. Or if you want to keep moving on, because we don't have to make a decision tonight. But I still feel pretty strongly that hybrid options make discourse very difficult. And I think there are a handful of boroughs that do provide hybrid options specifically for illness or vacation. But I think that still having the expectation that unless it fills that one of those criteria that we're together in person, seeing each other's faces instead of on a screen, and kind of another wrinkle to think. And again, just to throw this out there so that we have the next month to think about is Forest Hills, for instance, they do their legislative meetings in person. So like next week's meeting, our voting meetings, business meetings, but their agenda meeting would be on Zoom. And so that could be a kind of a hybrid-esque option where we have, instead of having to go full bore twice a month in person. We do 1 month in person and 1 month virtual. And so residents who have technological difficulties can join us in person and vice versa, as just another thing to think about as we're kind of processing over this next month for that. Mayor Swartzwelder, I see your hands up.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. So just like Josh was able to share his screen with us during the during the meeting, that has great value in the agenda meeting, and I like that idea. I think that could help us better understand, instead of just all being together in a room and have no access to our computers, or Josh is always bringing up data, and that's a big help when we are trying to make decisions. So I think that could really be beneficial to us.
Yeah, and when we have our building, I think we can build that building to some specs so that we can continue to have screens that can display those types of things in our in-person meetings, but we just don't have that. I mean, we're a couple years down from being able to do that. So we're just trying to figure out how to do this in the meantime.
I was happy to see the screens and the rendering of the council chambers on both sides, so I can have my data at the ready. So
I noticed that too.
Mhm.
Well, good. All right. So I think it sounds like we have a consensus to kind of hit pause for another month, table it for another month, and rejoin. Are there any other follow-up comments on that before we move on? Okay. Let's move on to item 5I, discuss painting handicap spaces in the business district with graphics in the parking spaces.
We had a police committee meeting last Wednesday, and one of the topics of discussion was the fact that many people are still parking in handicap spaces, and I know Mr. Price has confronted a couple of those people, and their response to him is that they didn't see it, they didn't know it was there. Although there's a blue line on the curb, big sign that says handicap space, big sign that says what the fine is. They claim they didn't see it, claim ignorance. One of the things Mr. Price recommended was maybe just in the business district, we paint a large handicap symbol in the parking space on the street. We're only looking at about 6 spaces. I mean, when you're looking at Noble, Washington, Waverly, and Monongahela, which is the crux of the business district, there's only about 6 handicap spaces in the business area. Monongahela, there's a few along the residential area. But it's one of the things he wanted brought forth out of the police committee for discussion tonight was if council was interested in actually painting those signs on the handicap placard logo on the ground, so that people can't really claim ignorance, because it's really, here it is. But it would only be for the business district. I think it would be difficult at best to try to paint 205 or 207 spaces throughout the borough, with that logo. It'd be very costly. And also, as a lot of people move in and out a lot and the spaces go up and down, then we actually have to paint the street black. So.
I mean, that was going to be my comment, is I have no problem with it, but I think we do need to limit it to the business district with that regard. Do you know the breakdown of those 6 spaces? You mentioned that it sounds like a few of them are in more of a residential area. How many of them are, I mean, I know, like, for instance, the one on Noble Street that, Mr. Price lives in that area, but his business is also there. I mean, are there how many of those are like like the actual business commercial portions?
The 6 I mentioned are in the business area. There's some other ones above the 6 on Monongahela down toward the Triangle that are people in front of people's homes for them. But there's one in front of Mr. Price's office, one in front of the River City Church, I think one near the Noble Mart, and then I know there's at least 2 on Monongahela on the other side. So about 6 total.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought some of them were at residential, so the 6 would be for commercial. That's okay. It's my fault.
Yeah, 6 commercial.
Ms. Scales.
Thank you. So I was wondering, and this may be a question for Jordan that I can ask during the Public Works, if there's a Public Works discussion. But I am noticing there are still some residents who are stating that they have not even, received the fresh coat of paint that we did provide. and the new signage yet in Swissville. And they raised this concern a couple of times. I believe the resident lives on my side of Swissville here off of the Monongahela area. So there's still some properties that have not been addressed. And I want to know, when do we plan to address them?
Well, I could say the signs were all done. So if there's somebody saying they didn't have a sign, let us know the address or have them let us know the address because, we had our spreadsheet, we inventoried all the signs, had the spreadsheet and put all the signs up. So if they're not done, let us know. I'll defer to Jordan on the painting though. It's just, we intend to do it first thing in the spring, but it has gotten pushed back because of staffing issues and other things that have come up.
Yeah, Mr. D'Ambrosio, do you mind commenting on that during your report so that we can finish the conversation on the handicap in the business district paintings and then making sure, because I've heard some of the same complaints that Ms. Scales has just expressed. So if you could kind of address on the timetable for those paintings when you get to your report. Are there other thoughts on the painting a handicap logo on the street for these spots? I don't sense a lot of strong opinions. Do you want it? Do we not? I mean, we've had Mr. Price who said yes. I've said I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
I'm okay on it. I'm like you said, not really a strong opinion. I don't know if anything that will curb it is great. I'll try to remain optimistic that this will be the thing that really does it.
Now, is curbing a pun?
I thought that too. Okay, great. Well, that's enough for a consensus. Let's make that happen, and it'll be good practice because I'm planned to. My hope is when we finally pass an ordinance for it to do the same type of thing for the EV charging stations, to have something on the street that designates that it is for EV vehicles only. So I guess that's redundant. Electric vehicles only. So you get the point. Okay, great. Well, then let's keep moving on, unless there's any other comments on that, to item 5J. Which is kind of similar area, discuss signage in the business district, directing motorists to the municipal parking lots.
This is another thing that came out of police committee. We have a lot of people parking in the handicap spaces. We also have a lot of people making their own spaces at the end of the streets, at intersections, at the corners. And one of the things that was generally a consensus is that maybe people don't, if you're from out of town or your first time coming in onto Noble Street for something, you may not know that parking lot exists behind the buildings between Center Street and Dixon Street. So Mr. Price brought up maybe it'd be a good idea that we put some signs directing people to the municipal parking lot. I mean, these signs, I was thinking about $600, but maybe $800 because we might need about 8 of them because we probably want to direct them off of South Braddock with a sign on South Braddock in 2 locations, and then a turn onto Noble turns into the parking lot. And then when the bridge is done, then we would probably put more in like over on Washington Street, like prior to the bridge, directing people across the bridge. But we're looking at a cost of like $600 to $800, which could be paid for out of our sign budget. We do budget about $11,000 a year for street and traffic signs that need replaced.
Mr. Price, I know you're the one that brought this up. You go ahead and scoot in before me.
I'd maybe go a little bolder. What I'm thinking about is in downtown Pittsburgh, you can usually see a parking garage a block or 2 away because they have signage that sticks out, towards the street that's on a pole or something that says parking. I'd like to see something large enough that people could look down the street and see a block away municipal parking lot. And then riffing off of something that the mayor had mentioned, that municipal lot sets probably 80% vacant every day. Arguably and it's basically 2 rows of cars in a municipal parking lot. Arguably you could take the front row, the row that runs parallel to Noble Street, and remove the parking meters and put signage there saying that any cars left overnight will be ticketed. And then have signs coming down Noble Street that would say something to the extent of free municipal parking 1 block ahead. and then, leave the meters on Noble Street, and maybe that would funnel people into that lot, which sets frankly, like I say, 80% empty because people don't see it. It's just out of sight, and it's only one block off of the main street. So I would suggest that we expand this into a discussion of what to do with the municipal lot long term. Like I say, maybe making that whole first row free, but of course we don't want people to park their car there for months. So that's why I suggest maybe signage that says that any cars left overnight will be ticketed or towed or something. And then we could still use the back row of the lot for people that wanted to have monthly permits to be able to leave a car there for 24 hours.
Good suggestion, actually. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, what I was going to comment on was, again, I don't have any issues with the signage. I know something that that the office was looking at was something like a park mobile, some type of, because I don't know how well that the site is currently patrolled and enforced for the parking. And so I think that it would be nice to be able to do something in tandem where we have some kind of comprehensive plan. Like you said, Mr. Price, that there is still opportunity for revenue generation if people want to leave their cars there long, kind of like leases, if you will, as you go into a garage, or just having some type of virtual, I don't know, third-party credit card vendor that we can actually enforce parking, because I don't know that anyone checks the meters. Go ahead.
And for decades, there was always a little bit of a tension between the one half of Swissvale and the other, because there are essentially no parking meters anywhere on Monongahela Avenue, with the one exception of that tiny little parking lot that is at the base of Monongahela and Washington Street. And yet Noble Street's always been just parking meters everywhere, so that's why I liked the idea. I believe it was Danita that initially suggested that maybe part of that municipal lot could be free parking. Like I say, people seeing word free might cause them to drive one more block and just say, oh yeah, I'll go park back there, and use the parking meters to scare them back there. Save that quarter.
Ms. Scales, go ahead.
Just wanted to let you know, you see, the police committee, we are busy. We are trying to figure out how to curb illegal parking, curb violators from parking in disabled parking spaces that do not have a placard, and curbing dog poop throughout Swissvale. We're busy.
In fact, in our police committee a few days ago, we met for 2 straight hours, which is not unusual.
So what does council outside of the police committee think about this? Any strong opinions?
I agree to get the signage, because it's important to hold people accountable, and if they want to park there, they can do it at a cost. So I agree.
Yeah, I think we should get the signage.
Why don't I get some mock-ups of signage, and we can talk about them at the next police committee meeting and see what, and have the committee approve them, maybe approve the size, the content, and the location.
And I think it would be good maybe for us. Sorry, Ms. Scales, were you saying something? I didn't mean to interrupt you if I was talking over you.
Nope, that was Liam.
Okay, sorry, Liam. So it might be also helpful as Mr. Price had another kind of outside of the box idea in that regard, maybe to have some type of comprehensive plan for us to engage, whether it starts with the police committee, whether we want to go with something like a park mobile, whether we want to provide free parking but still have space for more of that, like, quote unquote, lease or monthly parking. I think to have, so because how we want to use it, I think will dictate some of what that signage will look like. So I think having some type of consensus there would be helpful. So that might be another item of discussion for the police committee meeting. I would suggest, and I think bringing in the admin staff just to some extent in that conversation, because I know that they've done some legwork in terms of researching parking options and third-party vendors and things like that. Yes, Ms. Scales.
I was going to know is a lot of it's going to depend on, if the majority of council wants to charge for those parking spaces.
Ms. Scales, I think we lost you.
Back. And because of, lack of, available spaces to park, people are illegally parking. So the idea from, Deneen, which was, just removing the meters because they're not being enforced anyway. And we're not really even, attempting or, using revenue from that as an actual revenue in our budget. If we can make that space, available, but then also, like Bill is saying, highlight the fact that this available parking is here. We're trying to see if this is a creative way to basically reduce how many folks are illegally parking, because they can clearly see there's free parking right over here.
Yeah, again, I think it's worth looking into, and I think including that Denniston lot, Denniston and Monongahela that Mr. Price referenced earlier, is whatever we do at Noble Street, we should find some kind of overlap with Denniston and have some consistency there. So, police committee, on you want to take a crack at that and sound good?
Sounds good. I would just say with Denniston, before we could talk more about this on the police committee with Denniston. Okay.
All right.
No more comments from me.
Sounds great. We'll keep moving on. So we're at our departmental reports, and I just want to let everyone know that just to keep in mind that the U.S. women's soccer team kicks off in 18 minutes. So against the Netherlands, very big match. Let's move on to our first 6A police report, Chief Watson.
A couple things tonight. The first thing is that the mayor wanted me to remind everybody that Tuesday, August 1st is National Night Out. There'll be several block parties. We encourage people to get on their porches, turn their lights on. I know the police and the fire department have typically been out going to the block parties and speaking with the residents. And it's a nice event to get to know your neighbors if you don't know them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is with the 125th anniversary coming up on Saturday, we went out and the police department went out and marked the parade route and the mile route with no parking signs with plenty of advance notice. And Sarah and the police worked together to hand out flyers on the cars and let the residents know what's coming. So to educate everybody that they need to move their cars off those two routes. So we have a clear route for the mile and the parade. So I think that's we did it with a little more notice based on the fact that we had those two big events going through on Saturday. And as we always do, before the mile and before the parade, we'll go through and get a hold of any resident who doesn't get their vehicle moved in an attempt to get it off without anything negative happening. So we have a nice event. So the next thing I have is on Monday, we were called to the area of the 2300 block of Woodstock where 3 juveniles with firearms up to something, whether it was what they're attempting to break in a house or shoot the firearms. We don't know. We apprehended 2 of the juveniles and took them into custody and recovered 2 firearms. And the reason I'm bringing this up is after, have many discussions with the officers who work all the shifts and what's going on in neighboring departments. And we're seeing a trend of firearms being stolen from vehicles all over the area. And, it's a process. It's a direct result of people, A, leaving their firearms in their vehicles where they should never leave them unattended, and 2, leaving the vehicles unlocked. So I've been thinking about this since that incident. It was very stressful. It's very dangerous for everybody involved. And, we want to try to have an effect where we limit their availability of guns to anybody, let alone juveniles. It used to be when we had thefts from vehicles, they would go take change or GPS And it now seems from talking to the officers in the area that they're going looking for firearms. So I was thinking about it, and I think what we're going to work on is an education campaign for the community. I'm going to speak with some other police chiefs about this, try to spread it through the area, that we really stress to the public that if you're a legal owner of a firearm, you're responsible to keep that firearm secure, and putting it in your vehicle is not keeping it secure. Especially when you leave it unlocked. So, when people were stealing GPSs, or the kids were stealing GPSs and computers, it was one thing. Now that it seems to be this trend with the theft of firearms, I think we're going to push real hard to get a campaign out there to remind people that being stolen could lead to a tragedy that we don't ever want to have. So I spent a lot of time thinking about this. If you have some feedback and you want to let me know what you think about it, there's some way you can help with that. If you have a suggestion on something we can do, I'm all ears, because it's something we need to deal with because it's getting worse.
Two questions, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Could there be any criminal exposure for the gun owner if they leave their car, their gun, grossly negligently, available to be stolen?
No, not that I'm aware of. And these were reported stolen, so they did the right thing in reporting them stolen. But it's something that there's ways to secure your fire. Like I come home from work, I lock my firearm up. Mm-hmm. So because I have children in my house, and it's a safety issue. So like, I'm a believer in legal firearm ownership, but that means you have a responsibility, and I believe that responsibility. And you reminded that those tragedies can occur when people don't act responsibly with that. So that's all I really have tonight. It's something I plan on working on because I think it needs addressed.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments for him? All right, let's go to 6B, Code and Fire, Chief Wilhelm.
I just have a couple things. One, obviously it was covered under the agenda item. We have 4 applicants for part-time firefighters that the fire committee will be interviewing, and one of those firefighters actually applied for the fire marshal position. And we've been without one for 7 months since we promoted Joe Mahoney to a driver. It's been very difficult to get the qualified individual into that position. Hopefully this will work out. He's taking his EMT test on Friday, and once hopefully that'll go through and everything will be fine. And we may be able to get that filled, because we've been struggling. The shift commanders, Assistant Chief Volpe, and I have been filling in and doing those added responsibilities. So we've neglected some other things along the way, unfortunately, to what we have in place, because there's only so many hours in the day. But also, I just wanted to also thank Chief Watson. We had an issue with, there's a parking lot, if you will. It's really a right-of-way behind 2000, 2004, and 2006 Waverly, that he had contacted the Port Authority, because it's actually owned by the Port Authority, to get some vehicles and boats and other things that were stored there removed, so that we had access to the rears of those buildings, because that was originally put in as a fire lane and access point when they built the linear park, and the property is owned by the Port Authority. So thank you, Chief Watson, for getting Port Authority police out there to help us take care of that. I wanted to note 2 other things on parking. One was, just so you're aware, as far as the municipal lot, y'all were discussing about free parking. One of the issues that we had, and you just want to keep this in the forefront of your minds when you're making those decisions, is whenever we had, when the parking lot wasn't enforced, we had a lot of people that parked there and then went to the busway. And once it gets out that there's free parking, they're going to use that as a busway lot. Remember, that's why we have permit parking on Dixon, Roslyn, and Woodstock, because we battled that problem for years. So you might want to take that into consideration as you're considering the plans for the municipal lot, because I'd hate to see us end up back in that same situation where the lot gets filled up and it's really just people going to the park and ride. But that brings me to another thing with parking. We're having a large issue. The shift commanders and the firefighters have reported to me that especially overnight after hours, we're having difficulty getting around on a lot of the residential streets. A lot of cars are parking all the way up to the corners. We can't get in with fire apparatus. We see more and more people blocking fire hydrants. And I just want to, make a public announcement and let them know, we do everything we can when we respond to calls to take great care for everybody else's personal property. But I can assure you that if we see a house on fire and it's a matter of pushing your car with the fire truck and or a couple other cars to get that fire truck in that road to get to where we need to go, we're going to do that. Because if an emergency warrants it, we're going to do that. And we're not going to be responsible for your damage if your vehicle is illegally parked. Furthermore, if your car is blocking a fire hydrant and we need to connect to that fire hydrant, I don't mean to be so crass, but we will break out your windows and run the fire hose right through your car. And you will get a ticket and your car will be impounded when it's over because it's illegally parked. I don't want to see that happen. Unfortunately, it has happened in other areas and I've seen it during my career, but we really need to get the word out and get some enforcement action with some of these people, because if we can't get the emergency vehicles into where we need to go, we can't do our job. And it's really about the safety of everybody in the community. So I just want to take this opportunity to throw that out there. So everybody beware. I mean, we have a job to do, and if we have to mitigate an emergency, we've got to do whatever we have to do to get it taken care of. And lastly, as I had mentioned last month, the fire department got a special item to commemorate the Quacentennial. It's on the website now. You saw we've got custom-made challenge coins made memorializing the 125th anniversary, as well as the 120th anniversary of the fire department, because we were formed in 1903. I believe it was in June of 1903. So those will be available for sale at the community days, and they'll also be available online throughout the rest of the year for anybody who may want them. And we are working on getting another a little conversion kit for them to where they could be also made into keychains and or Christmas ornaments. Those will be available for a delayed order and shipping status later. And that's all I have to report.
That's a great idea. I really like that.
Mr. Price is saying, take my money.
Yes.
If I may, here, let me share my screen and show you this beautiful coin that the fire department has created.
Wow.
Can you see that beautiful coin?
Nice.
Oh, and there's some of our swag. Wait, let me see.
Oh,
There's the
That's
back
so
of it.
nice.
That's the back with the fire department logo. Well, maybe the front. You can take your pick. The front with the fire department logo, and then the other side with the Quacentennial. It's very, very beautiful.
They look great.
Well,
Anyone
hey,
have any comments or questions for Chief Wilhelm? All right, let's move on to item 6C, Public Works, Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Yeah, just a couple things. Been pretty busy preparing for the anniversary event coming up this weekend. As far as Varsity Road, the DPW is aware of it. It is on the list to be considered to be repaved. More of a short-term fix. I do have it on the list for some patching, some hot patching. So we'll try to address that as soon as possible. The handicap spots. Now, all the signs should be up. We completed that back in beginning of winter or end of winter. Now the spots, as far as painting, we're way behind on that. So I do intend on having a crew go out weekly to try to get caught up on that.
Mr. D'Ambrosio, if someone is struggling to have their curb painted blue, should they call the borough office and just make sure that you haven't missed them? I mean, what should their course of action be?
Yeah, I mean, they could call. I mean, we have a list of, the spots that we have painted. I get calls regularly. We have certain areas that, we still need to get to, and, we'll get there eventually.
All right, thank you. Ms. Scales.
Thank you. Jordan, do you know when you'll start sending out folks weekly to finish up painting those curbs?
I wanted to have guys out, obviously, a lot sooner, but next week I'll have a crew out.
Okay. And I've sent you and Greg a couple emails, and I mentioned it also in the council meetings that I'd like to meet our youth before they pack up and go back off to school. When can we arrange that to happen?
Friday is always a good day to come down. If you wanted to come down at lunchtime.
Okay, I'll come down this Friday at lunchtime. Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, and this is not major, it's real minor, but on Monongahela, right where the fire station is at, there's a pole and there's a sign that indicates downtown, and the sign is hanging upside down. Can we get someone to fix that sign?
Yeah, we could put it back up. Yeah.
Okay. And that's it on my end.
Mr. Price.
Yes, Jordan, as we all know, when the trolleys were phased out, our borough and probably most boroughs just paved over those trolley tracks. And I've noticed on Waverly Street, for example, that as the pavement gets older, that provides, you know, a way for the road to split open right on those tracks. And I'm sure it's labor intensive, but as we start repaving some of these major streets, eventually, like Westmoreland or Monongahela, wherever the trolleys were, is it possible for us to have them bid on actually removing those tracks underneath so that we have a firmer base for a road?
Last time I looked into that was really expensive to have those removed at previous municipality I was at.
Yeah, that is, I mean, go ahead, Bill. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was going to say, long term, though, you know, it might still be cost effective because, like I say, the roads seem to break down and fail a lot sooner with those tracks underneath. But I don't know what's involved in removing them.
One of the things we could do is just put it in the bid spec for that LSA grant that we have, the $599,000 for the paving and the handicap ramps, and just see what the cost is, and then make a decision when we award the bids, you know, if we feel it's worth our while to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. D'Ambrosio, did you have any more report? I didn't want to cut you off.
No, that's it.
The only other thing I want to add, just for DPW and more specifically the DPW committee, but this seems to be the appropriate time, is you know, and one of the things that a couple months ago we talked about, I don't know if the committee has taken any has investigated speed humps in the borough, because I received this week another email for McClure Avenue. I know we had different residents on last month or 2 months ago to talk about McClure Avenue. We've had Whipple, we've had Woodstock. And so I just think that's another, I just want to make sure that's still on our radar to be having some conversations so that the committee can bring some kind of recommendation for us of yay or nay and how to go about that.
I did speak to Miss Alfonso Wells a few weeks ago, and she brought that up. So she said, you know, we need to have a meeting, but she's been in and out a lot lately. So
I know.
we haven't been able to meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is Miss Alfonso Wells had brought up having a meeting, but hasn't happened yet. But I did actually just have a conversation this morning with one of the residents on Whipple who had reached out to me previously just to talk to them about ideas and things that we could possibly do. So more to come.
Great. Thanks. All right. Let's move on then to item 6D, manager's report. Mr. Batchy.
Thank you. First thing is I have one additional agenda item. I got late this afternoon, and there's really no reason to hold off until next month. And what it is the county has asked us to pass a resolution to either opt in or opt out of CDBG funding for the fiscal years 2024 to 2026. If we don't act, we're automatically opting out. So we need to act so that we're eligible for CDBG funding. You know, we get a grant from the COG every couple of years, $20-some thousand. We've used it, or it's in the queue to be used for handicap accessible ramps. And we're also eligible for other CDBG funds, for larger projects. But if we don't opt in, we can't apply. So I'd like to just add that onto the agenda for next week, so we opt in, because then we lose the funding source if we don't. Two other things I have just to bring everybody up to speed is I did apply for 2 grants last Friday for an electric garbage truck and an electric recycling truck through the health department. And it would be to fund both vehicles and the charging station at the DPW building to charge those vehicles. And we will also have the application for the Commonwealth Finance Authority for the streetscape finished this week. And then the last thing is, I just want to share my screen real quick. We have, this is Collingwood Playground. The monument for Darren Poindexter, which we participated in the purchase of along with the local citizen group, is being delivered to the monument company today from the company they had built it. And if you can see my cursor here, Sergeant Hahn and myself, Sergeant Hahn was instrumental in raising funds for this memorial. We were looking at possibly locating it right here in front of the basketball court. I know some people had talked about locating it over here outside the basketball court, but we were concerned that if it's outside the basketball court, that there could be some potential vandalism. And we thought if it was in the playground, less likely to be vandalized. There's a bench here, and a bench here, kind of be located in between the two of them. And we also thought too, you have the smaller kids playing over here in the playground area. And, maybe more of a, maybe they'll take the time to read it if it's there, because he was pretty inspirational to the kids. And we want it to be in a high visibility spot also, though we hope it would be a low vandalism spot. So does anybody have any issues or concerns with the location of that right here where my cursor is?
So is that outside of the basketball court right there where the benches are?
Yeah, it's on the, if you can see this right here, that's, the fence is kind of shown in an angle, and it would be on the other side of the fence. So nobody would be running into it playing basketball.
Okay. Well, then it doesn't take up space in the actual basketball court to interfere there. And I know the kids, they just have a great time on both ends of the park. Now, Collingwood Day, they have Collingwood Day there too as well. And they generally utilize both ends. I mean, I'm not seeing an issue, but of course, I know what the monument looks like from what was shared with us. I just don't know how big it is. So my only concern is if it's right there with the children, how they run a lot, if they're going to, trip and fall over it or anything of that nature.
It's a large monument. They're not going to fall over it.
Okay.
It's about 3 to 3.5 feet high and about 3.5 to 4 feet wide.
Okay.
It sits flat on the ground, and the monument company will put the foundation in, and they'll put rebar coming up out of the ground, and then it'll be down on the rebar so nobody can move it. But the sheer weight of it, it's not going to be moved.
Okay.
It's not going to be able to be moved. But no, it won't be a tripping hazard. Because like I said, it's larger than the small kids that are playing over there.
And even with that foundation and everything that they're going to put down, there's still a concern that somebody could possibly, steal the monument if it's in the grass.
Oh, no, it's my only concern is vandalism, not theft.
Oh, like maybe they're marking it.
Yeah. But over here, it's a more visible location, so hopefully people won't do anything to it.
I don't know about that, Greg. We need to get, this is something else. We need to get cameras over there, because there's a lot of things that has taken place at the basketball court, basketball at that area. Thank goodness nothing like very, very, very serious where it did result. That was a couple of years ago, the young gentleman who was found there. So we need to just get some cameras there. Yeah, we
Um,
need to work on getting cameras there.
Ms. Scales, can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead, Els.
I don't mean to interrupt Mr. Batchy, but
No, go ahead.
we have it in plans to add the cameras to Collingwood Memorial Park over the next month or so. Mr. Batchy and I are already working on that. So,
Okay, perfect.
Mr. Price?
I just had a general question. I was thinking about this monument and, it was an expensive monument. Do we have insurance coverage to protect things like our monuments? If it did get severely damaged, would we be able to turn in a claim? Do we have coverage?
It's in the playground and there's coverage on the playground and all the appurtenances is on the playground. So in theory, yes, it probably should be covered because like if somebody destroys the playground structure, we turn it into insurance, they'll replace it. They tear the fence down, we could turn it in. So the monument, like I said, it's part of the park, and also it being inside the park is probably helps that insurable value too.
Thank you.
Greg, before it's actually installed, is there any kind of way we can get photos of the final product?
I can ask Sergeant Hahn if he could arrange that.
Just so we can see it and make sure, we took all steps possible to make sure that it was placed in a space in the park that's not harmful to the children or inconvenient or anything of that nature.
Sure. And that's all I have for my report.
Mr. Batchy, were you going to talk at all about the 125th anniversary or?
No, I was going to defer to Miss Ansel, if that's okay.
Do you want to have her do that now?
Yeah, if we can.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I will try to be brief, but it will be hard because I'm so excited about this weekend. So as you all know, the official anniversary of Swissvale is on the 30th, but we're celebrating on the 29th. So we have all kinds of events happening this Saturday. Chief Watson has already mentioned some of the things, the Swissvale Mile and the 125th anniversary parade that are happening. But also the big finale is our Community Day event that is happening from 4 to 9 at Les Getz Memorial Park. The idea is the parade starts at 3. And you can follow the parade route. It is on Facebook and on the website. It basically marches all the way down Monongahela, McClure, and then Church Street, ending at Memorial Park, where we'll kick off Community Days. So we do encourage residents to come out, line that parade route. We're going to have our elected officials, all of our fire department, police officers, public works. We're going to have local and state representatives present. We're going to have a motorcycle group. We're going to have baton twirlers. The Golden Triangles are coming. Boy Scouts, all our Swissvale baseball and softball. So there's going to be a really fun parade. So I'd encourage you guys all to come out and then join us at the park. We're going to have food, and there's going to be live music, and there's going to be games, tons of games for kids. We're going to have a kids area games where you can pay $5 for a wristband. You get 2 prizes, and you can play games all night long. And games for older kids and adults too. So make sure you come. There's a lot of other exciting things. We already showed you some of the memorabilia the fire department is selling. We're going to have t-shirts and sweatshirts. We have stickers. And we're going to have a local authors booth. I'm really excited about that. People in the area who have written books and who have written books about Swissvale. So those books are going to be there and going to be on sale as well. So come support those local authors. And hopefully it's still finalizing, but we're going to have that community mosaic as well, where you can come and you can help build a community mosaic for it with us. I think that is it. There's still time to register for the Swissvale Mile, which is Saturday morning at 9 a.m. And Deneen, am I missing anything else? Nope, that about covers it.
Sarah, I have to say, just because Maureen States will be very upset if I don't mention, there are also, from what I understand, going to be balloon animals and face painting for the kids and a magic magic show or something, maybe, or no, the balloon animals, the balloon animals and the face painting. The magic was just a dream in my head that did not happen.
So I will mention, and that's a great reminder. Thank you, Josh. We have some people to thank. The Triangle Bar and Grill is a core sponsor of the Swissvale Mile. The Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf is the parade sponsor this year, so we thank them for that. We have Maureen at Neighborhood Realty is sponsoring the community days, and she has already booked for us. It's an airbrush tattoo artist and a balloon artist, and we also have a free face painting. So there's all those fun activities for kids. There's also a woman coming that does caricatures for $5. So that's something fun as well. And all kinds of other things. So, it's going to be a really good time. On top of that, I want to shout out to Needs Funeral Home. Charlie was really hoping we could do a bocce tournament. We didn't have the interest we hoped for, but there's still going to be bocce available. So maybe the tournament kind of scared people off. People thought, oh, I don't play bocce. I don't want to be in a tournament, but there will be some courts set up thanks to Stonewall Bocce, and you can play, just relax, enjoy some beverages. We have 2 Frey beer distributor just coming to provide drinks as well. So yeah, all kinds of things. I could talk about it, but
don't forget fireworks.
Fireworks at dark. Yep.
Fireworks at 9 p.m. So we are so excited. Thank you, Sarah. You've done a great job. Greg, Jordan, Chief Wilhelm, and Chief Watson. Thank you all for helping us plan this and make it to fruition, and we are so excited. And Mother Nature, please, no rain.
Well, thank you so much for those comments. We'll move to item 6E, President Report. I had taken some notes for the Quasqueese Centennial celebration, but all that was shared was far more than I would have been able to communicate, so I'm glad that was done. So all I'm going to add is that we're going to be meeting as council in executive session following this meeting to discuss personnel issues. And that's all I've got. So let's move on to item 6F, Solicitor's Report. Mr. Bob McTiernan.
Just to echo what you just said, Mr. President, all I have this evening are executive session personnel items, and they'll be brought up and reviewed with council at the executive session. I did circulate a memo about at least one of the major items. So that's all I have this evening.
Any questions for Mr. McTiernan? All right, let's move to item 7, other new business. Is there any new business we should discuss before we adjourn?
There's only 2 things I just want to make note of. I'll keep very brief. I had the opportunity to attend the vacant lot training that was hosted by the group that Sean and Steph has been working with. I would tell you guys it's very interesting. And all of the volunteers who are participating are all Swissvale residents. So we'll at some point soon have a nice little layout of all the vacant lots and what's going on with those lots in Swissvale. Secondly, Chief and I was able to meet with our block captains at the end of last month, and our block captains have already started with talking with their residents on their street. So for any block captains that is watching this meeting, if you have not done your canvas, we are encouraging you to do your canvas so that you can have a little bit of insight in terms of, what are some of the goods and uglies and bads and praises or great things that are going on with your respective street. Thank you, guys. That's it.
Thanks for those updates, Ms. Scales. Any other new business before we adjourn? Well, I'd love to entertain a motion to adjourn at 9:14 p.m.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any opposed? All right. See you next week. Council members, stick around for executive session.